Welcome, welcome, and thank you for being here tonight. Wherever you are right now, whether you are lying in bed, or resting in a chair, or curled up somewhere quiet and warm, I am glad you are here. Tonight, we are going on a journey together. A long, slow, gentle journey through time. We are going to travel through the history of one of the oldest and most beloved games in the world, cricket. Now, you don't need to follow along closely. You don't need to take notes. You don't need to remember any names, or any dates, or any scores. All you need to do is breathe in and out, in and out. Let your body feel heavy. Let your shoulders drop. Let your hands rest, open and still, wherever they are resting right now. There is nowhere you need to be tonight. Nothing that needs doing. No decision that needs making. Only this. Only now. Only the soft sound of a voice telling a very old story. Cricket is a game that has been played for over 500 years. 500 years. Think about what the world looked like 500 years ago. There were no cars, no planes, no electricity, no telephones, just fields and sky and people finding ways to pass the long summer days. And somewhere in those long summer days, in the green, rolling countryside of England, someone picked up a stick and someone else threw a ball, and the game began. That is where we are going tonight, back to the very beginning. So let yourself settle a little deeper into wherever you are. Feel the weight of your body. Feel the warmth around you. And let the story begin. Chapter 1. The Origins of Cricket. Cricket is very, very old. It is a game that grew the way most beautiful things grow. Slowly, quietly, without anyone planning it. The earliest whispers of cricket come from the soft green countryside of southeast England, from counties with old gentle names: Kent, Sussex, Surrey, places of rolling hills and hedgerows and long, unhurried summers. The exact moment cricket was born, we cannot say. Games like cricket were probably played for many generations before anyone thought to write them down, before anyone thought they needed to be written down. Imagine, if you will, a village in England. Perhaps the year is 1550, perhaps a little earlier. The village is small, a cluster of stone cottages around a green. There is a church with a square tower. There are chickens in the lane. The smell of wood smoke drifts from chimneys. School has ended for the day. Children pour out into the afternoon light. And on the village green, they begin to play. One child picks up a stick, a rough stick, perhaps a shepherd's crook, curved at the bottom. Another child finds a ball, a rough ball, stitched together from leather or wound from wool. The child with the stick stands in front of something, perhaps a low gate into the sheepfold, perhaps a stump of wood. The child with the ball steps back and throws. The child with the stick swings. The ball flies across the green, and the other children run. That is cricket in its very first form. The earliest written record that mentions something called cricket comes from a court case in the town of Guildford in Surrey, England, in the year 1598, a man named John Derrick gave a sworn statement in court. He said that, as a schoolboy, some 50 years earlier, he and his friends had played a game called cricket on a piece of land near the Free School of Guildford. 1598. And Derrick was remembering games from 50 years before that. So cricket was already old in 1598. Already something remembered from childhood. Already part of the fabric of English life. The word cricket itself is a small mystery. Some scholars believe it comes from the old French word criquet, meaning a small wooden post or stick. Others believe it comes from a Flemish word, crick, meaning a bent stick used for playing. There are other theories too. The truth has been lost in the long years. Somehow, that feels right. A game this ancient deserves a name, with a little mystery in it. By the early 1600s, cricket had spread beyond children's games. Adults were playing it. Men in the county of Kent were recorded playing cricket in 1611. It was becoming a game for all ages. And then, something happened that changed cricket forever. People began to bet on it. Gambling was a very popular pastime in 17th century England. People would bet on almost anything. Horse races, cockfights, card games. And now, cricket. When money became involved, the game became more serious. Wealthy landowners and aristocrats began to take an interest. They sponsored teams. They paid for the best players to come and play for them. A good cricketer could earn real money from the game. This investment transformed cricket from a casual pastime into something more organized. Sides were chosen with care. Grounds were prepared. Proper matches were arranged between villages, between towns, between the estates of rival noblemen. And as cricket grew more serious, it needed rules. For centuries, the rules had been informal, agreed upon before each game, different in different places. A match in Kent might be played differently from a match in Sussex. But in 1744, for the first time, the rules of cricket were written down. 1744. That is before the American Declaration of Independence, before the French Revolution, before the Industrial Revolution had fully begun. The world was still lit by candles and firelight, and cricket already had written rules. Those rules established the things we still recognize today. The wicket, with its stumps and bails. The crease, the line the batsman stands behind. The bowler, running in to deliver the ball. The fielders, spread across the ground. From a rough game on a village green, cricket had become something that required a written constitution. That is a remarkable journey, and it had only just begun. Chapter 2. Lords and the Laws of the Game. In the year 1787, a group of gentlemen gathered in London. They shared a love of cricket, and they wanted to give that love a home. They formed a club. They called it the Marylebone Cricket Club, after the parish of Marylebone in the north of the city, where they had begun playing their matches. The Marylebone Cricket Club, or as it is known to cricketers around the world, simply the MCC. The MCC set up their ground on a piece of land leased from a man named Thomas Lord, and so the ground became known as Lord's. They moved to their current and permanent location in St. John's Wood, London, in 1814, and their Lord's cricket ground has remained ever since. For over 200 years, Lord's cricket ground. If you have never been to Lord's, let me try to describe it for you. It is not the largest cricket ground in the world. It is not the loudest or the most modern. But it has something no other ground can match. It has time. When you walk through the Grace Gates, named for W.G. Grace, of whom we will speak shortly, and you step into the ground, you feel the weight of history. The old red brick pavilion, built in 1890, stands at one end. Its long room, hung with portraits of great cricketers past, is one of the most quietly beautiful rooms in English sport. On a clear morning, before the day's play begins, the ground is almost perfectly still. The grass is green and immaculate. The light is soft. The groundsmen move quietly about their work. There is a slight slope across the playing surface at Lord's. From the grandstand side, down toward the tavern side. It is the most famous slope in cricket. Bowlers must account for it. Batsmen must adjust to it. It has been there for 200 years, and it will be there long after we are gone. The MCC took responsibility for the laws of cricket. They refined them. They updated them when necessary. They were, for nearly 200 years, the sole guardians of the game's rules. Under their stewardship, the laws were clarified and expanded. The size of the wicket was standardized. The weight and circumference of the ball were specified. The width of the bat was limited. After a batsman named Thomas White famously appeared at the crease with a bat as wide as the wicket itself. One by one, over many decades, the edges of the game were defined. How many balls constitute an over? What counts as a no ball? When a batsman is out leg before wicket? How a match is won? How a draw is declared? Every detail considered. Every ambiguity resolved. The laws of cricket are long and sometimes complicated, but they have a certain elegance if you read them slowly. They are the work of many careful minds, across many careful generations. And at the heart of them is a simple idea, that cricket is a game of patience, a game of endurance, a game where the best team over many days and many hours and many moments of uncertainty will usually prevail. That idea, that patience is rewarded, runs through everything that follows. Chapter 3: Cricket and the Empire. In the 18th and 19th centuries, Britain built an empire. Ships sailed from English ports to every corner of the globe, to the Caribbean, to India, to Australia, to South Africa, to New Zealand, to the islands of the Pacific. The British brought many things with them wherever they went: their language, their laws, their religion, their food, and their cricket. On long sea voyages, sailors and soldiers would sometimes practice their batting on deck. In newly established colonies, among the first things to be constructed would often be a rudimentary cricket pitch, a flat piece of ground, some roughly assembled stumps. Cricket was a way of feeling at home in a strange place, a connection to the country they had left behind. But something remarkable happened in each of these places. The local people watched, and then they began to play. And when they played, they made the game their own. Let us begin in Australia. The first British settlers arrived in Australia in 1788. Within a few decades, cricket was being played in the colony of New South Wales. The wide, flat spaces of Australia were well suited to it. The long, dry summers produced hard, fast pitches, very different from the soft, green surfaces of England. Australian cricketers grew up differently from their English counterparts. They were tougher, more direct, less concerned with tradition and decorum. They played hard. They played to win a test match. A match played over several days between two national teams, testing the very best that each country had to offer. Australia won that first test match. They won by 45 runs, and a rivalry was born that has never faded. England and Australia have played test cricket against each other every 2 years, more or less, ever since. It is the oldest and most continuous international sporting rivalry in the world. And then came the Ashes. In 1882, Australia came to England. England had never lost a test match on home soil before. They fully expected to win. Australia won by 7 runs. One of the narrowest and most dramatic victories in the history of the game. The English public was stunned. The next day, a humorous obituary appeared in a London newspaper called the Sporting Times. It mourned the death of English cricket. It said that the body would be cremated and the ashes taken to Australia. The Ashes. The England captain, Ivo Bly, led a tour to Australia the following winter and won back the series. A group of Melbourne women presented him with a small terracotta urn. Inside were the ashes of a burnt cricket bale. Ivo Bly kept that urn all his life. When he died, it was donated to the MCC, and today it sits in a glass case in the museum at Lord's Cricket Ground. Small, fragile, priceless. Every 2 years, England and Australia still play for the Ashes. The series can be won or lost, but that tiny urn never leaves Lord's. It remains at home, in the museum, quietly watching. Now let us sail further east, to India. Cricket arrived in India in the late 18th century, carried by the soldiers and merchants of the British East India Company. The port city of Calcutta, now called Kolkata, was one of the first places it took root. Then Bombay, now Mumbai. Then Madras, now Chennai. At first, cricket in India was played mainly by the British, by officers and administrators and traders who wanted to maintain their English habits in a foreign land. But India was watching. The Parsi community of Bombay were among the first Indians to take up cricket seriously in the 1840s. They formed clubs. They arranged matches against British teams. They toured England in 1886. Then the Hindu community formed their own clubs. Then the Muslims. Then the Europeans. And they began to play each other in a tournament called the Bombay Presidency Match, which grew over the years into the Bombay Quadrangular and then the Bombay Pentangular. Communities that might have little to do with one another in daily life came together on the cricket field to compete, yes, but also to meet, to observe each other, to share something. Cricket was becoming part of the fabric of Indian life in a way that no one had quite planned. The great Ranjit Singhji, an Indian prince who played for Sussex and England in the 1890s and early 1900s, was one of the first to bring the two worlds of cricket together. His batting was unlike anything English crowds had seen before. Wristy, flexible, full of strokes that seemed to defy the conventional teaching of the game. England loved him. India celebrated him. He was a bridge between two worlds, and that bridge would only grow stronger over the coming century. Chapter 4: The Golden Age. The years between 1890 and 1914 are often called the Golden Age of cricket. It is a romantic name, and like many romantic names, it contains some truth and some nostalgia. The truth is that this era produced some of the most gifted cricketers who ever played the game, players of extraordinary elegance and skill. The nostalgia is that this was also the last age of innocence, in a way, before the world changed forever. At the center of this era stood one enormous figure, William Gilbert Grace, known to everyone simply as WG. Grace was not like other cricketers. He was a large man, broad-shouldered and powerful, with a great black beard that became one of the most recognizable images in Victorian England. He was a doctor by profession, a cricketer by passion, and a phenomenon by nature. He played first-class cricket from 1865 to 1908. Over 40 years. He scored over 50,000 runs. He took over 2,500 wickets. He played his last test match at the age of 50. When W.G. Grace walked to the wicket, something in the atmosphere changed. Crowds fell quiet. Fielders stood up a little straighter. There is a famous story, possibly apocryphal, but too good not to tell, that early in W.G. Grace's career, he was given out by an umpire to a ball that would have missed the stumps. Grace did not leave the crease. He simply stood there. The umpire looked at him, and W.G. Grace said, calmly, "The crowd hasn't come to see you, umpire. They've come to see me bat." Whether he really said it or not, it captures something of the man. Absolute, unshakable confidence. Around Grace, other great players flourished. Kumar Sri Ranjit Singh, the prince from Nawanagar, whose batting at Sussex was described by journalists as magical. C.B. Fry, who was not only one of the finest cricketers of the age, but also held the world record for the long jump, and was once, apparently, offered the throne of Albania. Victor Trumper of Australia. Trumper's batting was said to be the most purely beautiful ever seen. He could play any shot off any ball. He seemed to bat not for runs, but for joy. When he was at the crease, people felt fortunate to be watching. These men played in a world without broadcast media. Their fame spread through newspaper reports, through illustrations in magazines, through the memories of those who had seen them. Matches were long and unhurried. Test matches could last 6 days. There was no pressure to score quickly, no incentive to take risks. The game unfolded at its own pace, like a long conversation. And then, in the summer of 1914, the assassination of an archduke in Sarajevo set the world on fire. The cricket grounds fell silent. The young men who had been batting and bowling on perfect English pitches in June were marching through Belgium and France by August. Many of the finest cricketers of that generation never came back. The golden age was over. The world it had belonged to was gone, but the game endured, as games do, as people do. Chapter 5. Don Bradman and the Bodyline series. After the First World War, cricket slowly found its way back. The 1920s brought new heroes. In England, there was Jack Hobbs of Surrey, and England, perhaps the most technically complete batsman the game had ever produced. Quiet, modest, utterly reliable. He scored 197 first-class centuries over a career that spanned 4 decades. 197 centuries. No batsman in history has come close to that number. And in Australia, there was a young man from a small town in New South Wales who would change cricket forever. Donald George Bradman. Don Bradman, the greatest batsman who ever lived. There is no real argument about this. Statistics in cricket, as in many sports, can be misleading, but Bradman's numbers are so far beyond anyone else's that they speak for themselves. His Test match batting average was 99.94. The next best batting average in Test cricket history is somewhere around 60. Bradman averaged nearly 100. To put that another way, if Don Bradman had been dismissed for a duck in his very last Test match innings, rather than scoring 4 runs, his average would have been exactly 100. He needed 4 runs. He got 4 runs. And then he was bowled by Eric Hollies for a duck. Second ball. He walked off the ground at the Oval in London on that August day in 1948 to a standing ovation. One of the greatest sportsmen who ever lived, finishing on 99.94. There are those who believe he was nervous, that 200,000 people standing and applauding as he walked to the crease for the last time affected him as nothing on a cricket field ever had before. We will never know. But before that final innings, Bradman had done things with a cricket bat that seem almost impossible. In the 1930 Ashes series, still only 21 years old, he scored 974 runs in the series. At Headingley in Leeds, he made 334 in a single innings. He was at the crease for the entire first day, and much of the second. He simply did not get out. England was desperate. They could not work out how to dismiss him. And so, for the 1932 to 1933 Ashes series in Australia, England's captain, Douglas Jardine, devised a plan. He called it leg theory. The press called it Bodyline. The plan was simple and brutal. England's fast bowlers, led by the fearsome Harold Larwood from Nottinghamshire, would aim not at the stumps, but at the batsman's body. Short-pitch deliveries, rising sharply toward the chest and head. A packed leg-side field would catch the instinctive deflections. The idea was that even Don Bradman, even the greatest batsman in the world, could not play normally when the ball was coming at his ribs and his head. The plan worked, to a degree. Bradman still averaged over 50 in the series, but the Australian crowds were furious. The Australian players were angered and injured. Bert Oldfield, the Australian wicketkeeper, had his skull fractured by a Larwood delivery. Bill Woodfull, the Australian captain, was struck over the heart. The Australian Cricket Board sent a telegram to the MCC in London. They described the English tactics as unsportsmanlike and said they were causing ill feeling between the two countries. The MCC's initial response was to defend their team, but the controversy grew. Relations between England and Australia came close to breaking down entirely. There was even talk of cancelling future tours. Eventually, the MCC asked England to tone down the tactics. The bodyline technique was gradually restricted and eventually effectively banned. But the questions it raised never went away. What is fair in sport? What is the spirit of the game? Where is the line between hard competition and something worse? Cricket has been asking those questions ever since. Chapter 6. The West Indies and the Joy of. After the Second World War, the world changed. Empires crumbled. Nations won their independence. And on cricket fields, the balance of power began to shift. Nowhere was this shift more vivid or more joyful than in the Caribbean. The West Indies cricket team was unlike any other in the world. It drew players from across a scattered chain of small islands: Barbados and Trinidad, Jamaica and Guyana, Antigua and St. Kitts. Players who had grown up on different islands, under different conditions, speaking with different accents. But on the cricket field, they were one. West Indies cricket in the 1950s was still finding itself. There were great players. There was real talent. But there was also a structure that did not always allow that talent to flourish fully. White players from the islands often captained the side, even when black players of greater ability were available. Frank Worrell changed that. In 1960, Frank Worrell became the first black man to be appointed as the full-time captain of the West Indies cricket team. He was an extraordinary man, calm, thoughtful, principled. He led by example. Under his captaincy, the West Indies toured Australia and played a series that is still remembered as one of the greatest in the history of the game. It ended in a tie, the first ever tied test match, and the Australian public, who had come to their ground curious and left utterly captivated, gave the West Indies team a farewell that Melbourne had given to no visiting sportsman before. Worrell was knighted by the Queen. When he died of leukemia in 1967, at the age of just 42, a memorial service was held in Westminster Abbey, the first ever for a sportsman. The players he had nurtured carried his legacy forward. And through the 1970s and into the 1980s, the West Indies became the most dominant team in the history of Test cricket. Their weapon was pace. 4 fast bowlers, all terrifyingly quick, all brilliantly skilled. Michael Holding from Jamaica, who ran to the wicket so silently that batsmen could not hear him coming, and commentators called him Whispering Death. Joel Garner from Barbados, 6 feet 8 inches tall, releasing the ball from a height that made it rear sharply off a length. Malcolm Marshall from Barbados, perhaps the most complete fast bowler the game has known. Andy Roberts, Colin Croft, Wayne Daniel. Against this attack, batsmen all around the world struggled. Many were hit. Some were hurt. Almost all were uncomfortable. And leading those batsmen, with a bat in his hands and a calm, imperious authority about him, was Isaac Vivian Alexander Richards. Viv Richards. Viv Richards walked to the wicket without a helmet. This was a choice, not an oversight. He would face the fastest bowling in the world with nothing between his head and the ball but a maroon West Indies cap. He chewed gum. He looked out at the bowling with an expression of absolute, quiet confidence. Afraid of anything you can send at me. That is what his eyes said. And when he batted, he was magnificent. He could hit the ball to places that seemed physically impossible. He could change a match in a single over. He averaged over 50 in Test cricket and over 47 in one-day internationals, numbers that even today stand as marks of greatness. For the people of the Caribbean and for the African diaspora around the world, the West Indies cricket team was more than a sporting side. They were a symbol. Evidence that excellence, true, undeniable excellence, could not be ignored. They won the first Cricket World Cup in 1975. They won it again in 1979. They were the best team in the world for nearly 20 years. And they played with a joy that was unmistakable. A delight in the game itself. A sense that cricket was something to be celebrated, not merely endured. That spirit, that particular joy, belongs to West Indian cricket, and to West Indian cricket alone. Chapter 7. India, the 1983 World Cup, and a nation transformed. By the early 1980s, one-day international cricket had been established for a decade. The format was popular, exciting, accessible, and the Cricket World Cup, held every 4 years, had become one of the great events in world sport. The 1983 World Cup was held in England. The West Indies were expected to win their third consecutive title. India were considered rank outsiders. India's captain was Kapil Dev, a fast-bowling all-rounder from Chandigarh in the Punjab, a man who played cricket with a smile on his face and an energy that was almost impossible to contain. India's campaign began uncertainly. They won some matches, they lost others, and then came their group stage game against Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe were not a major force in world cricket at the time. India were expected to win comfortably. Instead, India collapsed. They lost wickets quickly. At one point they were 17 runs for 5 wickets, then 78 for 7. The match seemed lost. India seemed about to be humiliated. And then Kapil Dev began to bat. What followed is remembered as one of the greatest innings in the history of one-day cricket. Kapil Dev hit the ball with a freedom and a ferocity that had nothing to do with tactics. He simply played. He attacked. He refused to accept that the match was over. He scored 175 not out. India won the match, and they kept winning. India made it to the final at Lord's Cricket Ground. Their opponents, the West Indies, the double world champions, the greatest team on earth. India batted first and scored 183 runs, a modest total. Most observers felt it would not be enough. And then, India's bowlers bowled. Madan Lal, Balwinder Sandhu, Roger Binney, Mohinder Amarnath. One by one, the great West Indian batsmen were dismissed. Viv Richards, who had been batting beautifully, was caught at mid-on by Kapil Dev himself, running back from the boundary. The West Indies were bowled out for 140. India had won the World Cup. In India, the response was extraordinary. This was before satellite television, before the internet. Most Indians had followed the match on the radio or on small, grainy, black and white television sets. But the news spread instantly. Streets filled with people. Firecrackers were lit. Cars honked their horns. Strangers embraced each other. That day changed Indian cricket forever. It showed that India could be the best, that the game belonged to them as much as to anyone. The decades that followed would prove it beyond all doubt. Chapter 8. Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and the widening world. A sense of the game belonging to more and more people, or gentle celebration. While India was rising, other teams were finding their own paths to greatness. Pakistan had been a test-playing nation since 1952. They had produced brilliant individual cricketers from the very beginning. But it was in the 1980s and 1990s that Pakistan reached the very top. Their great player of that era was Imran Khan, a fast bowler of genuine pace and menace in his youth, who became, in his later career, one of the finest all-rounders the game has seen. He was also a leader, demanding, inspiring, visionary. In 1992, Imran Khan led Pakistan in the Cricket World Cup in Australia and New Zealand. Pakistan's campaign began poorly. They won few of their early matches. They seemed likely to be eliminated. And then they won. And won again. They qualified for the knockout stages. They beat New Zealand. They beat England in the final. Imran Khan lifted the World Cup trophy at the Melbourne Cricket Ground. He dedicated the win to a cancer hospital he was building in Lahore in memory of his mother, the Shaukat Khanum Memorial Cancer Hospital. He used the attention the World Cup victory brought him to raise funds and complete the hospital. Cricket had given him a platform, and he used it for something beyond cricket. Sri Lanka too was finding its voice. Sri Lanka played their first test match in 1982. They were a new team, still learning, often beaten. And then, in 1996, they arrived at the World Cup in the subcontinent and did something remarkable. Their opening batsmen, Sanath Jayasuriya and Romesh Kalawitharana, pioneered a new approach to one-day batting. Instead of defending early and accelerating later, they attacked from the very first ball. They scored boundaries off the first over, off the second, off the third. The opposition never recovered their equilibrium. Sri Lanka won the 1996 World Cup. A small island nation, playing only its second decade of Test cricket, had beaten Australia in the final. The game kept expanding. South Africa returned from years of sporting isolation. Zimbabwe competed at the highest level. Bangladesh achieved Test status. Afghanistan and Ireland joined the Test family. Cricket was no longer a game of a handful of nations. It was truly global. Chapter 9: The Modern Era and the IPL. As the new millennium arrived, cricket was changing faster than it ever had before. Television had transformed sport everywhere. Cricket was no exception. Matches were broadcast around the world. Players became international celebrities. Endorsement deals, advertising campaigns, the kind of fame that previous generations of cricketers would not have been able to imagine. And then came a new format: 2020 cricket. In 2003, the England and Wales Cricket Board introduced 2020 cricket in the county competition. Each side would face just 20 overs. A match would be over in roughly 3 hours. It was immediate. It was loud. It was designed for the television era, for people who wanted their cricket fast, full of sixes, full of drama in the final over. And when 2020 arrived in India, it became something else entirely. In 2007, India won the first ever ICC World 2020 tournament, and an idea began to form: the Indian Premier League, the IPL. The IPL was founded in 2008. It was a franchise-based 2020 tournament. 8 teams, based in Indian cities, owned by wealthy business people and film stars and industrialists. Players from around the world were auctioned to these franchises in a glamorous annual event. The best cricketers in the world, from Australia and South Africa and England and the West Indies and New Zealand and Sri Lanka, all came to India to play. For 2 months every year, the IPL consumed the attention of 1 billion cricket fans. The money was unprecedented. Young players from India, spotted in local tournaments and development programs, could become millionaires in an afternoon at the IPL auction. The IPL changed the economics of world cricket entirely. It made India the undisputed center of the global game. It created stars who were known not just in cricket-playing countries, but around the entire world. Sachin Tendulkar had already become a global icon long before the IPL. His career spanned 24 years. He scored 100 international centuries. 100. He played his first Test match at 16 and his last at 40. When he retired, the Parliament of India paused to acknowledge him. After Tendulkar came Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma. After them, Shubman Gill and Yashasvi Jaiswal. Each generation passing the torch to the next. And through all of this, Test cricket endured. There were those who worried that 2020 would kill Test cricket, that the shorter, louder format would drive out the longer, quieter one. It has not happened. Test cricket is still played, still watched, still, for many, the highest form of the game, because there are things that Test cricket reveals about technique, about temperament, about the capacity to concentrate and endure across 5 long days, that no shorter format can replicate. The game is big enough for all of it. Chapter 10. Women's Cricket. We cannot tell the full history of cricket without speaking of women's cricket. Women have been playing cricket for almost as long as men. The very first recorded women's cricket match was played in Bramley, in Surrey, England, in 1745. That is 29 years before the American Declaration of Independence. For much of the next 2 centuries, women's cricket existed quietly on the margins. It was played and loved by those who played it, but it received little funding, little media attention, and little recognition from the cricketing establishment. Women played in long skirts in the Victorian era. Then, in more practical clothing, they formed clubs, organised tours, competed internationally. The Women's Cricket Association of England was founded in 1926. The first women's test match was played in 1934 between England and Australia in Brisbane. England won by 9 wickets. For decades, women cricketers funded their own tours. They raised money through subscriptions and fundraising events. They travelled to Australia and New Zealand and India, not on professional contracts, but on personal passion. The love of the game sustained them when little else did. And slowly, very slowly at first, then more rapidly, things began to change. The ICC Women's Cricket World Cup was first held in 1973, 2 years before the men's equivalent. England won it. Australia won many editions that followed. New Zealand and India and the West Indies became strong forces. Today, the landscape of women's cricket is transformed. There are professional leagues in England, Australia, India, and elsewhere. Players are contracted. They are paid. They are celebrated. Elise Perry of Australia is one of the finest all-round cricketers, male or female, the game has ever produced. Smriti Mandhana of India is one of the most elegant batters in world cricket. Heather Knight of England has led her country with intelligence and grace. Women's T20 internationals draw large crowds and large television audiences. The trajectory is steeply upward. The game that began on village greens 500 years ago now belongs to everyone. That is worth pausing to appreciate. Chapter 11. The Spirit of Cricket. Cricket has something that very few other sports have: a written philosophy. The laws of cricket begin with a preamble, a kind of introduction that says, before any rule is stated, this is what the game is about. It speaks of the spirit of cricket. It says that cricket is to be played with hard and vigorous competition, but within the spirit of the game. It talks about respect for the opposition, for the umpires, for the game itself. It talks about not seeking to take unfair advantage. In cricket, there is a tradition that a batsman should walk, that if you know you are out, if you felt the ball touch your glove, even if the umpire did not see it, you should leave the crease yourself, without waiting to be given out. Not every player does this. The tradition has eroded in professional cricket, where the stakes are very high and the margins are very fine. But the tradition exists. It is still spoken of, still admired when it happens. In cricket, If a fielder catches a ball and is not certain whether it was a clean catch or bounced first, they are expected to say so honestly. If a batsman is injured and cannot bat in their normal position, the opposition may sometimes allow them to bat earlier than the rules require, as an act of sportsmanship. These are small things, perhaps, but small things matter. Cricket has not always lived up to its own ideals. There have been controversies, ball tampering, abusive language, poor conduct. But the ideal remains, and the very existence of the ideal, the fact that cricket has written down the kind of game it wants to be, means that there is always something to return to. A compass pointing towards something better. Patience, endurance, fairness, respect. Not bad things to carry into the rest of life. And so, we come gently to the end of our journey. We have travelled far tonight. We began in a small English village 5 centuries ago. Children playing with a stick and a ball on a patch of grass. We watched the game grow. We saw it given laws and a home at Lord's. We watched it travel across the oceans on great ships, to Australia, to India, to the Caribbean, to every corner of the world. We met Don Bradman, the greatest batsman who ever lived, finishing his career on 99.94. We stood with Kapil Dev on the Lord's balcony, holding the World Cup. We watched Viv Richards walk to the crease without a helmet, chewing gum, afraid of nothing. We saw women play cricket on a field in Surrey in 1745, and we see them playing still, on the greatest grounds in the world, in front of millions of people. All of this from a simple game, a stick and a ball. A summer afternoon. There is something quietly wonderful about that. About the way things persist. About the way something played by children on a village green can grow over 500 years into something that connects hundreds of millions of people across dozens of countries. Games matter, not because they are more important than the serious things of life, but because they remind us that there is joy in the world, that competition can be beautiful, that patience and endurance and skill are worth celebrating. You have traveled a long way tonight. You have listened for a long time. Now, let the story settle. Let it drift away like smoke from a slow fire. Let your breathing slow. In and out. In and out. The grounds are empty now. There is only the evening sky above the ground, the stars coming slowly out, the sound of the wind moving through the trees beyond the boundary. The game is over for today. Rest now.